Right. Good morning. We are here at our second series session for the Learn, Love, Livingston, a dive into diversity, advocacy, economy, and empowerment learning series. We are so glad that all of you have joined us today. We are really pleased that with our second online series, we're garnering more and more attendees, more and more participation, and especially this month being Black History Month and all of the drive for us to learn new things. I'm glad to see so many folks on the call today. So I would like to start out with just a brief introduction. I am Nicole Matthews Creech, and I am the current board president for the Livingston Diversity Council. I've had the honor of being the board president, serving the council for 10 years this January. And it is time for us to really share out and engage with the community. And we're so very excited to have you join us today and share this information with us. Just a couple of brief notes before we get started with our speaker today. Wanted to acknowledge our Champion for Change partner, St. Joseph Mercy Livingston out of St. Joseph Mercy Health System is our Champion for Change partner, meaning that they are supporting the Livingston Diversity Council in funding and in logistics, as well as in activities and all of our projects that are happening right now. So we very much appreciate our support from St. Joe's as our Champion for Change partner this year. A little bit of background for a lot of folks when we start talking about the Livingston Diversity Council. Many folks say that they didn't know that the Diversity Council existed. So it's pretty natural now with everything going on in our world that people are expecting things like a Diversity Council to engage the community. The Livingston Diversity Council has actually been around since 1987, so that predates me by quite a ways because I'm totally not that old yet. Sure, let's believe that for right now. And so he started in 1987. And so we have been around for this year, 31 years in Livingston County. It is our mission to be a change agent for diversity, equity, inclusion, and access that educates, collaborates, and empowers to build a thriving community. Our vision is that Livingston County will be a transformative community that embraces and empowers all people for their uniqueness and contributions. So just a little bit of background on the Diversity Council. If you're interested in learning more and connecting with us, I encourage you to visit our website at livingstondiversity.org. You can also send us an email at livingstondiversitycouncil@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram with our handle at Livingston Diversity. So please feel free to connect with us, engage with us, ask questions. We'd love to hear from you. And last, this is my intro slide. So welcome officially to our February session of our Learn, Love, Livingston series. And today we're focusing on Black History Month and just really having a critical conversation. There's a lot of social media out there. There's a lot of conversations happening, and especially in an overwhelmingly white community like Livingston County, many folks struggle with how to engage, how to show up, how to be a part of the conversations that are happening. And so we have humbly asked Reverend Yolanda Whiten to join us today, who is the pastor for St. James AME Church. It's the African Methodist Episcopal Church here in Brighton, to join us. She is also serving on the Livingston County Diversity Council on the board of directors. Started last year with us, so she's with us for a couple more years in her 3-year term. So I'm so very excited to have her with us today. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Reverend. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Everybody just give me something, let me know you're there. Thank you. All right, so everybody should mute. I don't know where that noise is coming from. We will stop screen sharing, I think. And Then, okay. And then we'll be able to figure out who's making all the noise and talk about them. Okay, everybody. I don't know who that is. I'm almost can't hear myself. Can we see it? Ron. There we go. Okay, I will call you out if you do that, if you make noise. That is who I am. I am Reverend Yolanda Whiten, and I am the pastor of St. James. I would like to know by a show of just hands here. I have everybody up here right now because I want to be able to see you. Is everybody familiar with the AME Church? And I know that you know it's over there, but can you tell me about it? Yes, no. If I do a quiz right now, can you tell me about it? Okay, that's what I want to know first. Before I get started, I would like to say thank you to Nicole. Thank you to Nicole for being the director of this Diversity Council for all these years, for 10 years. And I'm sure that over the 10 years, it hasn't always been what it is right now and what it's going to be. Enough so that St. Joseph Mercy Hospital and its organization has said, hey, we want to be a part of this. So we really owe her a great deal of gratitude for sticking with it 10 years ago when probably we all didn't think it was overly necessary. It's overly necessary now, right? Thank you for caring about Black History Month, everybody that's on here right now. Thank you for caring about diversity and inclusion and equity. Those things are vastly different. And it is good to be, again, I see Irene shaking her head. Yes, I appreciate that because a lot of people kind of think those things are the same. So I don't have a lot of time today. This is a short program. We could talk about Black history for like the next 5 years, right? It's 400 years that right here in the United States. And honestly, we were Africans before we got here, before we were dragged here, before we were enslaved, we were already Africans. So there's a lot of history. But I want you to know today that I am gonna have on here with me today a steward from my church who actually went to school with our Madam Vice President uh, at Howard University, and I am looking forward to him speaking also today, and that is Barry Wynn. We might even call in his daughter. She doesn't know that, but I know that she can answer any question I give her, as well as our sum laude graduate from Loyola University who majored in history. But before I get to any of that, I want to tell you a little bit about the African Methodist Episcopal Church, because this is a piece of history that you should know. You should be proud, no matter how small, that you have a Black church in your community. You should be proud of that. That has been existing there for a long period of time. And you should be proud of its heritage. So 205 years ago, the African Methodist Episcopal Church was started in Philadelphia. And that's almost as old as the country is, right? So that's an important piece of information. We are a connectional church, which means when you have St. James AME in your community, you are connected to thousands of churches in every state of the United States, at least one. There are 58 in the state of Michigan, 58 AME churches to which I am connected to. We are in 32 countries, and we are on 5 continents. Now, why does that matter? You're like, so what? No, it matters because we're connectional. So people who are on here that are Catholic, hands for Catholics on here. Okay, let's use them as an example. Catholics are Catholics in Michigan, and they're Catholics in Indiana, and there's Catholics in Chicago, but they don't know each other unless they're in the same family in the same way that we do in the AME church. To give you an example, if you call Jim Clyburn and ask him, does he know Reverend Whiten? How many of y'all know who Jim Clyburn is? Okay. If you call him and ask him, does he know me? He's going to say yes. Absolutely, I know Reverend Whiten. Jim Clyburn is AME. And he's been to my conferences and he knows me. He literally knows me. Val Demings, y'all know Val Demings? Okay. She's AME and she knows me. And so that's I named those people not to be impressing you that I know them, but to tell you that's how we are as a church. We are a connectional church. We go to the same conferences, we attend the same meetings, we call upon each other all the time, and we consider ourselves family. So anybody on here that's in a sorority or a fraternity or something of that nature, the United Methodists understand what I'm saying because they are like us in that they are together. There we go. We got a United Methodists on here. All right. They can tell you I'm telling the truth. So the history of our church is that we used to be United Methodists. And that's why I've been able to go to their church and serve in their church. I'm allowed into their pulpits by the bishops in the United Methodist Church, and our bishops allow it as well. And the reason is we were once all in one church. And then we weren't really allowed in the church. The white people in the church would come in because more and more Africans came. At 205 years ago, we were all Africans. And so when the Africans came to the St. George's Church, to the St. George's, are you guys hearing me okay? Something's happening here.
Something's happening.
You are echoing.
Oh no, not us.
It's your child, I think.
Okay, so when that would happen, when the Africans started coming to the church more and more often, they would send us up to the balcony. They would tell us to move. They would push us to the back of the church. And one day, an usher tried to make Absalom Jones and Richard Allen move while they were praying. And I guess they had just about had it. And so they said, we will finish our prayer. And after we finish our prayer, we will leave. And that's when they left the church after they finished their prayer, and all the Black people got up and walked out of the church, and they went down the street and started their own denomination. It's a long story connected to that, and I don't want to use up all the time talking about that, but they started their own denomination. And at that time, 205 years ago, we were Africans, so we were African Methodists. See there? See how that works? It doesn't mean you have to be African to come visit us when we open back up. It just means that that's how we started. And I appreciate Gail and some others who I see on here who came to our church one day and said, hey, we came down to say hello and see what goes on in here. And they, we're your neighbors and we want to say hi. So I see some of those people on here now, and some people pop in and see us on Sunday. Please know you are invited. You can go to our website, stjamebrighton.org, and you can see how to get on to our service on Sunday. That's a little piece of Black history. If you go see the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia, the first picture you will see is Richard Allen, the founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So all Black churches actually broke off from the AME Church. We are the very first denomination that ever existed in these United States. So that's a piece of history in Livingston County that you should embrace as knowing and be proud that you have one of these churches there. And to know that some of those people are connected, and those people I named and others know your pastor. I know even Raphael Warnock. He's Baptist, but because we're all preachers and everything, and we have services together, and we are connectional, and I just spent a lot of time in Atlanta, and we travel. I've been on the other continents. I've been to the other countries. And I think even when I first came to Brighton 6 years ago, I was in the middle of taking a medical trip, a group of 60 doctors over to India at that time. So some of you may remember or know something about that, because we have churches in India as well. So that's the first thing. If you guys have a question about anything I just said, now is the time for that portion of what I just said. In Black History Month, I don't see any hands. If Nicole sees one, she's going to jump in and tell me. Feel free to jump in, put your hand up, or put something in the chat if you have a question, and Nicole will let me know. And we will try and answer those questions as we go along, or maybe at the end we'll have a little bit of time. I don't want to take all of Barry's time, because I want Barry to be able to make you a little bit uncomfortable. I'm gonna, we're gonna play good cop, bad cop today. So I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on in these United States. It did not just happen. And I don't know who wants to tell you it did just happen, because of Donald Trump, or because of how he thinks, or because of white supremacists, or anything like that. On January 6th happened. It did not surprise one Black person anywhere in these United States. And if a Black person tells you they were surprised, they're probably not telling you the truth. When you walk around in Black skin, or Hispanic skin, or Latino skin, you are discriminated against on a regular basis. You are treated badly on a regular basis. You are afraid of the cops on a regular basis. This is not new to anyone. And it's not an afraid, like fear because of being afraid of cops or anything like that. It's a fear because of what can be done, and nothing happens. I mean, okay, so 200 people have been arrested possibly because of the Capitol riots. But I just saw in the news last night that the lady who called the police on the man in the park and made up a lie that he was getting ready to attack her has now been let off. That's the kind of thing we're more accustomed to seeing. I saw that one of the people from the Capitol was allowed to go on their vacation. And unfortunately, I saw that many of those people were from Michigan. And I'm sure that disturbed all of you as well. The problem with racism, or trying to become an anti-racist person, is that we have to tell the truth about what it is. And in the spirit of Black history, because I don't need to tell you about Frederick Douglass or Rosa Parks or some of these people you hear about all the time. You know about them. Matter of fact, Rosa Parks was AME too. Let me make sure you know that. She was AME, and yes, I knew her, and yes, I was there at her funeral when she passed. So, I mean, a lot of older Blacks will be AME, and the other ones will say, I used to be AME, if whatever, we call that another denomination. I used to be AME. But what I want to say to you today, and if there's any one thing that you can do to help race relations, to help us get better, to help the Livingston Diversity Council, one of the things I want to say to you is that you have to learn how to talk to everybody. The only way anything's going to get better is if we talk to each other, if we get to a place where we get to know each other, where we have a way to have a conversation. The Bible says only the truth will set you free. It is only the truth that will set you free. So you can't be afraid to say, Reverend White, I don't agree with you. I don't see it that way. I'm not too holy that I can't handle that. you have a right to your opinion, and I have a right to mine. What I owe you is the ability to listen to what you are saying. And then you owe me that same respect. Until we get to a place where we can listen to one another and hear one another, we are not going to change anything, because we can't just start up here and say, here's the problem, let's fix this. Because down here, I still hurt. This is like a child who's been neglected by their parents for years and years and years and years. And then the parent shows up and wants to be the parent when they're 30, when they become an NBA basketball star. It's like, well, where were you been when I couldn't eat when I was 11? You know, they want to know. That makes a dent in somebody's personality. That makes a pain in somebody's heart. And so I want to say that as people who care about this, people who care, in the course of Black history, on this first day of Lent, on this day as we march towards Calvary, I want to say to you that racism hurts everybody. And until we can teach people that, many people don't even realize how they are being hurt by racism, because you're fine. You're in your home, you're warm, you know, your heat's working, you have a car, you have a refrigerator full of food. So you don't always know, but there is a cost to white people for the ugliness of racism. And one of the costs is that just that you had that experience of, I mean, how many people in Brighton and Howell have wanted to stop by the AME church and find out what goes on in there? It takes people who really aren't racist to say, let me go in there and find out what's going on. Let me knock on the door. Let me call the pastor. Let's invite her over. That takes somebody who really wants to know you. But if you have a fear of that, or a fear of the concern for that, you can't ever be close to those people. You have to be able to talk to people in order to develop relationship with them. And I used to tell people, I run a community center as well. I'm the CEO at the Ann Arbor Community Center. And I used to tell people all the time, we need to get 20 little Asian women across the table, and we need to let them talk to 20 big, tall, the biggest Black men we can find, and let them sit across the table. And then after an hour, they're all going to like each other. They're all going to know each other. And then they will have talked to them. Sometimes it's just a conversation. And we say, well, we need to know all the history. Well, I just told you it's 400 years of history. You cannot know all the history, but you can know the people. You can know the people that you know. And then you can begin to develop the history of your own friendship. You can be friends with me. You can be friends with Barry. You can be friends with Jacob. You can be friends with the Black people that are around you. And as you begin to develop a situation where you can be friends with those people, you will have more strength inside of you to start up a conversation with someone else. And that's how it starts. This was called a critical conversation. It's not a critical conversation to figure out what the white supremacists necessarily are doing. You know what they're doing. They're creating hatred. They are creating something out of a cowardly place inside of themselves, out of an emptiness inside of themselves. That is what's wrong. White supremacists didn't just start 4 years ago. They've never, ever not been here. I hope everybody understands that. They have always been here. And now they've been let out of the little hole they had dug for themselves, and somebody made it okay for them to come out. And so now they're out, but they're not going back in unless we join together as a country and say we will not tolerate this. And so the first thing you need to know is that you have to be able to start up a conversation. So how do I do that, Reverend Whiten? How can I start up a conversation? How do I start up a conversation with a Black person? I think you just Start up a conversation. That's what I would do if I wanted to talk to you. Matter of fact, when I talked to Nicole the first time, I called her to find out, do you have anybody Black on the Livingston Diversity Council? and I mean, I tell you what, I have knocked Nicole off her feet a couple of times with some of my questions, right? But she's never once been deterred. Never once. And then another time I brought up a question, I said, well, how come you can't ask somebody if they're Black? And see, white people think there's something wrong with that. Like, you can't ask a person who they are. This is who I am. Would you mind asking somebody, are you a doctor? Are you an attorney? Are you a grandmother? Are you an auntie? Are you the best cook in your family? You can ask people stuff about themselves. And I happen to be Black. You can ask me about it. And you can ask questions about it. And you should not feel like there is something wrong because you did that. You're not going to get better if you do. Now, is there going to be one person who doesn't like that? Probably. Just like there's going to be one person if you ask them, can they cook? Because, we're people and some of us have issues, right? Not us, but other people, right? They have issues. We all have issues. We're all sinful creatures and we're not perfect. But the only way you're going to know anything, I live in a place where there's we live in Michigan, there's universities all around us. And if we don't know anything else, we know that to gain knowledge, you have to do research. You have to do reading and background and understanding. And so as you go through Black History Month, you don't need just the Black people to tell you. This is our history. It's American history. That's Nicole's favorite sentence. And so I'm just saying, since it's our history, all of us, our community, Brighton, Howell, Livingston County, all needs to know their own history. Amen. If we was in church, this would be time you say amen. And so I'm telling you right now that this is our history. The more you know about it, the better off I am, because you have to stand up for me. If you want to do something in Black History Month, learn some Black history, not Frederick Douglass, not Martin Luther King, not even Rosa Parks. How about some August Wilson? How about some jazz music? How about some gospel? Something else. Find out what Black people did about this, whatever it is, because you're not going to find anything that Black people didn't have something to do with it. You are not. And if you don't know what is your favorite thing, call me up and say, what Black person did this? So I can look them up. So I can look them up for you. So I can give you the information. Because it's still sad that we are in a place right now where it's just the first this and the first that and the first whatever. When, as Michelle Obama said, slaves built this country. Now, I know we don't like to talk about the slaves. Can that just go away? Can we stop talking about the slaves? No, we can't stop talking about the slaves. Because that's our history. American history. It's just like in your own family. You can't stop talking about your great-great-great-grandma. If you stop talking about her, it doesn't make it go away. It just means you don't know anything.
Yeah.
You don't know about your great-great-grandma, right? That's what it is. And if you want to know more about your own family, or how they came to do this, or how they came to be that, or how you came to live here, then that's what you have to do, is the research to understand your family. Black people are your family. They are your countrymen. They are part of who you are. And I can tell you that are, you know, years and years ago when Black people couldn't put their names on architectural designs because white people would put their names there instead of the Black people. Oh yeah, a Black architect designed Duke University. A Black architect built buildings at Princeton. A Black architect built a whole bunch of buildings at Harvard, designed a whole bunch of buildings there, but they couldn't put their names on the buildings at the time or on the blueprints. And now, slowly, that information is starting to come out, and the truth is starting to be told. You wouldn't have that. Slaves built the Capitol. That we were so pressured and so hurt. There's not a person on this call right now that wasn't physically sick at what they saw. I know that because you're here. You're on this call today. So I know you care to that extent that it was wrong that that happened. And so as we move on today, and I'm going to let Barry talk for about 20 minutes or so, and I'm going to come back, but I'm just trying to tell you that these are some things that I want you to think about, because racism hurts everybody. And I wanted to give you reasons for that. When you say, well, how am I hurt? The stereotypes, the prejudices, the negative thoughts about people of color, even if you're not the one thinking them, when you hear somebody in your family, when you hear somebody on your street, when you hear somebody in your community degrading other people, it hurts you. And you don't know how to talk to them. You don't even feel comfortable telling them, I don't want to hear that. It's wrong. And that's why more and more and more, we have to come together and be able to tell the truth. Because until we have more people saying this is wrong, or I'm not comfortable with that. And I mean, you know what, Black women, you know, we get it because we speak up. We say the truth, and we say the truth when it's not popular. You know, I've had people in my own family say, do you have to say that? Can you put your hand down? Would you please not ask a question? But no, I'm not afraid, because you can't hurt me anymore. My history, my ancestry of how I came to be has taught me through the history of being Black that if I don't speak up, if I don't pick up that gun, Harriet, and tell the people they better not turn around, that we won't get out of here from where we are. Do you understand what I'm saying? It has happened in that way, that I'm not gonna get anywhere if I'm quiet. So I better learn to speak up. As a woman, especially a Black woman who stands in a pulpit, and I can stand in a pulpit in every state in the United States and in 32 countries and on 5 continents, just in my own denomination. I can stand in those same pulpits for the United Methodists. And all of you who knew Dion Johnson, he asked me to preach his consecration sermon. That's the Episcopal Church. His first priest was Absalom Jones, friend to Richard Allen. That's how Dion and I became really good friends. I wasn't able to preach the consecration because, you know, this stupid virus y'all haven't gotten rid of yet. But what I'm trying to tell you is that we can't be afraid if what we speak is the truth. We have to be careful because so many people believe that their truth is what's right. That's why we have to learn to listen to one another, because what the supremacists thought were right on the 6th of January obviously was wrong. But if we don't tell the truth, if somebody had told them the truth before the 6th might not have happened. The truth will set you free. That is from the Word of God. The Word of God says the truth Jesus Christ is the truth. And so as a person that's been ordained to the highest ordination in my denomination, I have to tell you that it's incumbent upon me to learn the truth, to examine the truth, and to always be ready to stand firm with the truth, no matter if it gets me in trouble. And if that way, in that way, I don't mind saying I want to be like Martin Luther King. I want to be able to tell the truth in all circumstances. And so I want you to feel comfortable with that. You can tell any Black person, I'm asking you because I don't know. I'm asking you because I thought you might have the answer. I'm asking you because I thought today you might teach me. You might help me to be fuller and more observant or more understanding. When we did the implicit bias training here in Livingston County through St. James Church, I don't know if any of you came, but many of the people who did show up, they said, we learned things about ourselves. You don't even think about the things you learn about yourself until you're in implicit bias training. The girl who was helping us teach it, Dr. Hemphill, she said, I do this implicit bias training once a week, all the time. And every time I do it, I learn something else about myself that needs correcting. That's how we are. It's so subtle. It is so subtle when you feel a certain way or when you were raised a certain way. And so we have to be careful to just think other people know better. Don't think they know better. Don't think they know better. Y'all hear me? This is important. Do not think other people know better. Where they came from, it might have been okay. Okay, this is important. Don't think they know better. If they say a rude joke, you tell them that's a rude joke. I would prefer you don't tell it in front of me. And I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but I need you to know I don't appreciate that. You have to go into a place where you want to be like Jesus. You do have to go there. Now, I'm going to stop for a second, just a second. I'm going to give away some of my time because I really want you to hear from Barry. Barry is a design engineer for Ford. So you think he's educated. I'm telling you, he's educated. If he doesn't sound educated once or twice during his little dissertation right now, forgive him. Amen. But he is a Black man who went to Howard University. And I want you to hear from him because I think he can bless us right now. And an hour and a half is not a long time. We need a whole day for Black History Month. But because you came, I couldn't do this without Barry. The first thing I did was call Barry and say, I want you to talk to Livingston County, Barry. He said, well, Reverend Whiten, will it be okay if it's not totally comfortable? And before I put you on, before I put him on, I want you to know this. Being uncomfortable is how we get better. When you were taking algebra, you were uncomfortable. When you had to ask your wife to marry you, you were uncomfortable. You said, I sure hope, I believe she's going to say, yes, Lord, I do. I believe it, but I don't know. You were uncomfortable when you bought your first house. You were uncomfortable the first time you owned and drove your own car. I'm telling you, important stuff makes you uncomfortable. And learning about how to be better people on the planet and live with each other. It might be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. And if we're going to help other people get better, we got to learn how to do it. Let's hear from Barry right now. Barry Wynn. Barry, unmute. Okay, there you go.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Thanks. So first of all, I'd like to thank Nicole and the Livingston Diversity Council for hosting this event. I'd like to thank Reverend Whiten for asking me to share time with her today. Reverend Whiten set the ground rules when she said we might do this as a bit of a good cop versus bad cop. So the title of today's topic is a critical conversation. Reverend Whiten gave you the conversation. I'm about to get critical. The topic of my talk today is the case against unification. And I'd like you to keep that in mind as I go through this. So
now, before he gets started, we'll come back when he's done and we'll have about 10 minutes and we'll fix it. But listen carefully. Go ahead, Barry.
After 4 explosive years under our last chief executive, a very contentious election, and a full-blown insurrection on January 6th, there was a strong call in the land for unification. In fact, it is a regular talking point of our recently elected president. We live in frightening times. Threatening inflammatory rhetoric has been turned well up past 11 for quite some time. And there is still a very real threat of fascism ascending to the federal seat of power under an authoritative strongman. Because our country is under the threat, and besides, our country is under the threat of economic collapse brought on by a worldwide pandemic. Wouldn't now be the time to unify under the American banner? Well, it depends. Unification for whom? Certainly not for Black Americans. In fact, unification is a direct threat to the welfare of Black citizens. We have only to look at history to understand why. At the end of the Civil War, a crowd gathered on the front lawn of the White House in celebration of the defeat of the Confederacy, clamoring for a speech from President Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln respectfully declined and promised a speech for the following night. I believe it was actually his last public speech ever given before his assassination. In consolation, he requested that the Marine Band play Dixie. Lincoln declared, "I have always thought Dixie one of the best tunes I have ever heard. Our adversaries over the way attempted to appropriate it, but I insisted yesterday that we fairly captured it." As the crowd cheered him on, he added, "It is good to show the rebels that with us, they will be free to hear it again." In choosing to welcome the Union's adversaries back into the fold with that song, Lincoln helped set a pattern for the betrayal of the formerly enslaved for decades. Not only was Dixie enjoyed by the throng on the White House lawn that day, it became emblematic, along with the rebel battle flag, of the oppression and degradation of Black Americans for decades to come. Oppression and degradation that began with the end of the Reconstruction era. Contrary to what generations of children were taught in school, the Reconstruction era immediately after the Civil War was highly successful. For 11 years, the formerly enslaved, aided by the protection of Union troops and with the sanction of the federal government, worked tirelessly to secure full citizenship in these United States. Ironically, it was the radical abolitionist wing of the Republican Party, yes, you heard me, the Republican Party, in opposition to the efforts of Lincoln's successor, Andrew Johnson, who triggered the passage of the Reconstruction Act of 1867. Included in the laws were the following measures. It divided the South into 5 districts run by military governors until such a time that acceptable state constitutions could be written that eliminated all vestiges of slavery. Furthermore, all males, regardless of race, excluding former Confederate leaders, were allowed to participate in constitutional conventions forming the new state governments. Furthermore, the new state constitutions were required to provide universal voting rights for all men, regardless of race, suffrage not being on the bill at that point. States were required to ratify the 14th Amendment, which guaranteed Black citizenship in order to be readmitted to the Union. That is key. Marinate on that for a minute, if you will. 1867, the Republican Party calling for full citizenship rights of Black Americans at the exclusion of former Confederates for involvement in the process. Confederates who were legally barred from interfering into the lives of Black citizens. Think of what could have happened if this had continued into the 20th century. Think of what highly motivated, industrious, and capable men and women could have done when granted the freedom afforded white Americans, afforded the often celebrated European immigrants to pursue the full rights and benefits of American citizenship, unfettered by Jim Crow, allowed to flourish as their imaginations and their industry dictated. Well, what did happen? As I said, for 11 years, the United States actually began to live up to its promise. Congress passed the Freedmen's Bureau and Civil Rights bills, successfully overriding Andrew Johnson's vetoes to pass them into law. They even moved to impeach Johnson. Ulysses S. Grant, elected after Johnson, supported Reconstruction and enforced the protection of African Americans. He used another law, the Enforcement Act, to put down the Ku Klux Klan, essentially wiping them out by 1872. Grant integrated the federal ranks, extending job opportunities to Black Americans. He championed equal rights. He supported a second Civil Rights Act of 1875. During this era, Black Americans enjoyed the highest representation in government we've ever had. Across the South and in Missouri, there were 1,517 Black state office holders, among them 6 lieutenant governors. And at the federal level, 16 congressmen, 185 federal office holders in all. Furthermore, across the South, local officials had great success in creating integrated governance. Accordingly, the formerly enslaved prospered in land and business ownership, in education, and in all phases of life. That is, until the cause of white unity became more important. The election of 1876 did not produce a clear electoral winner between Republican Rutherford B. Hayes and Democrat Samuel Tilden. Neither had the 184 electoral votes required at the time to be declared the winner. The parties formed a bipartisan electoral commission to decide the race. To break the deadlock, the two parties came to an agreement to provide Hayes 20 disputed electoral votes to win the presidency. To secure the support of Southern Democrats, the terms of the agreement included that the federal government would remove all troops remaining in Southern states, and that Southern Democrats had the right to deal with Black citizens without Northern interference. Unity achieved. Southern whites immediately resurrected the Ku Klux Klan and began a campaign of violence and terror that by 1905 had removed any significant traces of Black political power. In 1898, unified in their opposition of integration, the white population of Wilmington, South Carolina, staged an actual coup. So we have precedent for January 6th. A mob of 2,000 white men overthrew the legitimately elected local fusionist party consisting of Black and white leadership of the city. They expelled city leaders who would comply, murdered those who wouldn't. They destroyed private property and businesses, burned the only Black newspaper to the ground, and killed an estimated 300 people. By this point, Mississippi had passed a new constitution which disenfranchised Black voters. South Carolina and the rest of the South followed suit. In effect, whiteness nullified the 14th Amendment and overrode any claims of legal citizenship by Black citizens. The Wilmington coup appears to be the watershed moment that cemented this notion across the land, and it became the template for the unity of whites at the expense of Black lives and livelihoods for decades to come. In a show of labor unity and solidarity, a series of massacres were committed in the summer of 1972 in East St. Louis, Illinois. This left an estimated 250 Black citizens dead and another 6,000 homeless. The violence was triggered in reaction to the recruitment of Black workers to replace white union employees striking the aluminum and meatpacking industries, the very same unions that had denied Black workers membership. Reporting at the time indicated that East St. Louis's white police force either ignored or participated in the violence. And the National Guard, called in by then Illinois Governor Frank Lowden, largely allowed the massacre to continue. Much of East St. Louis's Black population fled over the bridge spanning the Mississippi River, connecting their city to St. Louis, Missouri, never to return. In the summer of 1919, Eugene Williams, a Black 17-year-old living in Chicago, was playing on a raft in Lake Michigan with friends. The raft drifted into a white swimming area, and the angry white beachgoers began throwing rocks at the raft. Williams fell in and drowned because, according to the official coroner's report, the rocks that the white bathers continued to throw at him prevented him from coming ashore. The white beachgoers were unified under the need to keep recreation strictly segregated. When Black beachgoers on the scene complained, they were attacked by a white mob that spread into the Black community. The rioting lasted for 5 days. As with East St. Louis, police arrested Black participants, but steadfastly refused to arrest whites. At the end of it, 15 whites and 23 Blacks were killed. 500 total were injured, over 60% of them Black. Over 1,000 Black families were left homeless. Not one white rioter was convicted of a crime. That summer, there were similar incidents in Washington, D.C., Knoxville, Tennessee, Longview, Texas, Phillips County, Arkansas, and Omaha, Nebraska. In 1921, white rioters, unified by the mandate to protect a white woman's virtue, destroyed over 35 blocks of Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Greenwood community, also known as Black Wall Street. Greenwood had been organized in 1906 after Booker T. Washington toured the Arkansas Indian Territory in Oklahoma. At that time, Greenwood was the wealthiest Black community in the nation. It contained several grocers, 2 newspapers, 2 movie theaters, several nightclubs, and churches. Estimates have ranged from 75 to 300 Black citizens killed. The violence was precipitated by the claim that Dick Rowland, a 19-year-old Black shoeshine, had assaulted Sarah Page, a 17-year-old white elevator operator. Note that much of the violence was organized by the very same Klan that U.S. Grant had eliminated in 1872. Excuse me. Rowland was taken into custody, and word quickly spread through the Black community that a crowd of white men had gathered at the jail, likely to lynch the young man. A group of 75 Black men stationed themselves outside the jail to protect Rowland. Upon the assurance of the local sheriff that Rowland would be protected, the Black citizens agreed to disperse. As they were leaving, a member of the white mob attempted to disarm a Black man, and the confrontation devolved into a firefight. 12 men were killed, 2 Black, 10 white. White rioters gathered and rampaged through the Black community that night and into the morning. At least 1 plane was reported to have fired on the Black community from the air, reportedly the first instance of the use of air power on American soil. When the dust settled, 10,000 Black people were left homeless. Property damage estimates ran to more than $1.5 million. There are other examples that echo throughout our history, our collective history. Detroit, 1943. St. Louis, 1949. Charleston in 2015, and Charlottesville in 2017. And while the last 2 instances involve single actors, they were by no means lone operatives, as they were radicalized by the exposure in unity with like-minded affiliates. Black history is the struggle for liberation. It is not just a collection of who did what when. Starting effectively in 1619 on through to Ferguson, Staten Island, and Kenosha, Wisconsin, to name just a few. We struggle to liberate ourselves from racism, which I take pains to emphasize is not a defect of individuals, but a system and structure designed to serve white supremacy, to serve white people who often unify in its service. often violently. I recently heard the celebrated activist Angela Davis say that unity is an abstract. She had been asked about the concept of America unifying in this moment in history. Dr. Davis suggested that to be effective, people must unify around something. She suggested that unity in struggle makes better sense. Otherwise, she implied, it's just lip service. The struggle for Black liberation goes beyond allyship, beyond just listening and lip service to commitment and action. Let our country unify around the liberation of its Black citizens. Too often, it has unified against us. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Barry. Now, before we get started, a couple people asked me some things, and we're going to be here. But I want to tell you that in this moment that you heard me talking, and then you heard Barry, think about how it affected you. It was probably easier to listen to me because I'm cute. But the history that Barry told you is important for you to know. Maybe you've heard of Greenwood, maybe you heard of Ferguson, maybe you heard, we all heard of North Carolina in 2015, things like that. But what we're saying, Black history is everybody's history. Now, here's the other part. As Barry tells you all of this history, things that you can go and look up, things that you can read about yourself, did you get a little bit uncomfortable at all just hearing some of that? Maybe you already knew all of it. But let me just ask you this, and this is the one thing I have to keep saying. Many people don't want to fix it. We don't want to say out loud, we want to fix it. Because in our hearts, we know it's wrong. My own husband of 31 years, 33 years, I don't know why I keep saying 31, but I've been married 33 years. I've been married 33 years. And my own husband, his father had 100 acres of land taken away from him in Alabama. So our family's financial position in the world has been grossly affected by that. Now, just yesterday, February 16, 2021, on the news all across America, there was a news article about a Black family who tried to get an appraisal on their home. Their house was appraised by a professionally licensed appraiser. And the appraisal came back $500,000 lower than the house could be appraised for. How do we know that's true? Because the Black family talked to their white friends, and one of them decided to be them. They put up their pictures in their home. They put their pictures on the wall, and the appraiser came and appraised the house $500,000 higher. 2016, 2021, I believe you can find that story on at least MSNBC, because I believe that's where I heard it. Ari Melber's show. And they had the families, both families there, the white family and the Black family. This is still happening, people. I was a mortgage loan officer when my son was born 30 years ago, and I was told by the president of the bank, we don't make loans over there. I lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we don't make loans in Ypsilanti. This was happening 30 years ago. And I was told that. I'm a Black woman. They told me that. Today, that person is in my Rotary Club. Yeah. The wrong you do will come back. It might take time. It might take a little time, but it does come back. The reason we need you to be uncomfortable with it is because I can understand wanting to be on top. I can understand being comfortable in your position. I mean, when my husband goes outside to shovel the sidewalk, I'm okay. I don't want to go help him. It's cold outside, right? My position is, yes, baby, I'm gonna make you some coffee when you come back in. That's kind of how we are. We have this position, you have this spot, or it's not affecting you, or you don't want your grandchildren affected. But listen, because I have a dollar in my pocket, doesn't mean you have to take the dollar out of your pocket. If all of the community came over and helped me cut trees in the spring and summer, because you can't see our little church unless you cut the limbs, I mean, it's not going to do anything to hurt anybody else because our church gets better. It's not going to make your church lesser. Nobody's going to leave your big cathedral to come to my church. But the point is that's kind of how it is. It's that we think that if we give this person this spot, then there won't be a spot for us. Go ahead, Barry.
Just want to add to amplify that. Susan Rice, who has I can't remember the position on Joe Biden's cabinet, just announced that the United States loses about $1 trillion a year because of racism, because a direct result of white supremacy and racism. As I noted in my talk, the unlocked potential that's left on the table because Black Americans aren't allowed the full opportunity to participate. Just a short personal history. My great grandfather was quite a businessman in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee. He died due to the neglect of a white doctor. His regular doctor, who was white, was out of town, and the gentleman that was left to take his patients refused to see my great grandfather when he was sick. And by the time his doctor returned, he had fallen into a diabetic coma, and he died. Now, my great grandfather was at a time that we were just coming out of slavery. This was turn of the century when he would ascended in farming in Tennessee. He farmed cotton. He ran timber. He was just a phenomenal individual. He was the first to electrify his house in his community. And he had purchased a premium insurance policy. Payout would have been about $20,000. And this is right at the beginning of the Great Depression. $20,000 that he had set aside for his family in the event of his death. He was he's younger than I am now. I think he was around 55 years old. I'm 59. When the family, now they just had the indignity of a doctor allowing him to die. And the family goes to the insurance company and to cash in the policy. And I'm going to say it the way they said it. They said, we don't write policies like that for niggas, and denied it. And they went back and they went back and they went back. And finally, they only gave him the premiums that he had paid, that he had paid in. Now think of what $20,000 could have done for that family. In fact, I can tell you, my great-grandfather had 600 acres of land, 300 that he owned outright, another 300 that he had bargained for, that he was in the progress of paying for. They had to lose that 300 when the Depression hit. They could have saved that land and more. So just think of the potential that's locked in our society that doesn't get released because of racism. Thank you.
That's great. No, that's great. And you guys, like I said, we're going to run out of time, and this is too much. So you have to come to the next race conversation next month. This is LDC, but St. James has conversations too. So you just have to follow both of us. But let me just say this as we go on. Right now, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and the vaccines are out there. And everybody's heard about Tuskegee and Henrietta Lacks and all of that. But those are not the only situations. The Tuskegee thing is probably never going to ever happen again. And Henrietta Lacks, if you don't know about it, go find out about it. But all I'm trying to say is it's always been that we were the experimental people for drugs. It wasn't just a couple of things. I mean, even as far back as slavery, Black women were, without anesthesia, operated on to see if something worked. There's just all kinds of things. So when you hear that, well, Black people are not sure they want to take the vaccine. First of all, I want the vaccine, okay? I mean, I just want you to know, get the vaccine. Everybody get the vaccine. Everybody get vaccinated. That's the first thing. But when you hear somebody 70, 80 years old saying they don't want to do this or that, don't just think they're ignorant or they don't know the facts. Because the truth of the matter is that they live the facts. They live through the facts. My grandmother, who was a nurse, which is just amazing all by itself, she was a licensed practical nurse. She was first a hairdresser. That's what they called them back then, hairdresser. And then she went back to school and became a licensed practical nurse. My grandmother wouldn't ever put all her money in a bank. Not ever. Not till the day she died. We wouldn't let the mortician in her house because we knew that she kept money everywhere. And we tried to convince her that the money would be safe in the bank because of the FDIC, because now, she lived through the Depression and, they made these rules. And she said, baby, you can believe whatever you want to believe. But if they want to change the rule on you, they will change the rule tomorrow. They'll make a rule that white people can get the FDIC money and you can't. That's what my grandmother taught me. So if I grow up with that, if I grow up believing that, y'all might say, well, that's crazy. No, it's not. I just told you. I just told you that yesterday on the news, a white person got an appraisal $500,000 higher than a Black person. People ask me all the time. I've been living in my home for over 20 years. And people ask me all the time, y'all own the house? Do you rent? I know. Go ahead, Barb. Don't fall off the sofa. But the point is that that's how you own a house in Ann Arbor, Michigan? That is a big deal. That's why it is a big deal that Blacks have been able to come to that place. Republicans, and I don't want to talk about nobody because y'all Republicans, y'all know I love y'all. I'm just telling you what's going on. Barry's the bad person. Okay. So Republicans are afraid that because Blacks and Hispanics and Latinos and all kinds of other people live in this country, that somehow there are going to be so many more of them than there are white men, and that white people are going to lose their position because somehow when we get in office, we're going to be like them. We're going to act like them. We're going to do what they did. That's not what's going to happen. That's never happened. It's never been the case. You've never seen that happen. And all I'm trying to say is that's why we need you. That's why we want you to know about Greenwood. That's why we want you to know about Oklahoma. That's why we want you to know about everything in history, because we need you to stand up and say, this is not going to happen. Nothing would have happened. We wouldn't be okay now if it had not been for white people. And that's the thing that's important. Black people still needed somebody else to come, to hide them, to help them go to the Underground Railroad, to help them go to that bank, to that appraiser, and prove that this actually happened. We need each other. So when Barry says, I don't know about unity, what we really mean, or what I mean, Barry can tell you what he really means. But I'll tell you what I mean about that. You got to be careful just saying, let's come in unity. What does unity mean? What is it going to mean? You know, 9 of my friends were shot down in a church. And the boy who did that wanted to create a civil war. All of you were hurt like those were your family members. All of you were just astonished that that could happen in the United States of America, that people couldn't go to Bible study. It hurts you. I know it hurts you because you flooded my church. There was nowhere to sit in my church. Brighton and Hal came to the church building and said, what can we do? We just want to pray with you. And we came together then. And it takes us to care about one another like that. And this is going to get worse before it gets better. But when we say forgive, I don't know if I can forgive you if you just shot my mother. I know y'all say, well, I thought you was ordained to the highest thing in your church. Look, I'm human. And if you shoot my mother, I don't know how much Jesus I got in me. I'm telling you, it takes a minute. Forgiveness takes time. And understanding takes time. We all have to find a way to learn and know each other. When I say let's talk, I mean, you don't have any problem asking somebody in your neighborhood, how did you cook that? Why is yours so much better than mine? Yes, it's a more important subject perhaps, but you feel comfortable asking that question. And that's where we have to get. We have to get to a place where we feel comfortable saying that's not okay. Where you get comfortable saying, I got a friend. His name is Barry, and he told me this happened. I looked it up and he was telling the truth. And that's the kind of thing that helps understanding occur. You need to believe Columbus didn't discover America. You need to believe Michelle Obama. Now you probably understand more about Michelle Obama when she made that statement of this, when Barack became the president, and she said, I have never been more proud of the United States than I am right now. And people were appalled that she would say that. They thought it had something to do with Barack. Well, it did, sort of. It had to do with what had happened, the events of what that meant in the moment. And that's exactly when the Pandora's box was opened. It was opened right then. The people who fear it were annoyed. They rose up against it. They tried to find everything they could find wrong with the man. And as you well know, this is another thing you will always hear Black people say. Barack had to be perfect, darn near. He couldn't make a mistake. He put on a brown suit and they about lost their minds. Oh yeah, y'all heard, look it up. Look it up. We don't have time to go into it today. And this is how we are. Black people who achieve, who make it somewhere, they have to do better. They have to achieve more to make it in those places. My son went to Duke Law School. Do you know that he met at Duke Law School the very first person who ever went to Duke Law School? Guess when that was? The first person that ever went, ever got in, 1968. That's a shame. That's a shame, y'all. 1968 in all our lifetimes. That's the first time. And all I'm saying is, so when that man came and visited the school while my son was in law school, you know, I think a question came up. My son was telling me about his speech, and what stuck with me was somebody asked him, well, were you on a journal? Were you on the Law Review? Were you on one of the journals? And he said, no. I was doing everything in my power to stay in school. But what I really want to share about that is I know that that's astounding. But while my son was in law school, he graduated from Duke in 2015. A noose was hung at the Commons at Duke University in 2015. I called my son while he was in law school and I said, Jacob, did you hear about Trayvon Martin? You know what he told me? Mom, this happens every week in America. And I'm sorry about Trayvon. I'm sorry that that happened. But it happens every week, almost every day. It's just that sometimes, thankfully, it makes it to the news. So we got about 6 minutes because Nicole wants 2 of them. But if you have a question, I'm going to tell you, you can ask it now. We're trying to talk about a whole lot of things in an hour and a half. And we're trying to let you know that we're available. I am so proud of the stories that Barry shared with you. I am so proud. This man grew up in St. Louis, y'all. There's some trouble in St. Louis, okay? I mean, it's always, y'all gotta look up some problems in St. Louis. I'm telling you though, that there's trouble everywhere. I was born in Indiana. They don't even have to, they wait 10 minutes and say it went Republican. You don't have to wait very long when it's an election. They redid everything in Indiana, so no Black person will ever be mayor. Ever. It's 2021 and there's never been a Black mayor in Indianapolis, Indiana. I mean, I'm telling you. And I mean, that is these kinds of things, but you know, if you go look at the population, you know, so all I'm trying to tell you is that we have work to do. These kinds of situations that we're doing, we have to thank the LDC for bringing them to the forefront, because it gives you an opportunity to hear about some things and maybe ask a question. You got to put that little hand up if you have a question or anything that you want to say. This is the time. I know we haven't given you much time, but if you do have something you want to say, now is the time. Okay, I hope I'm not ignoring someone. I put my email in the chat. You can go through me to reach Barry and some other members of my church, or other Black folks that you want to get to. Go through that email and I will share it with them, and they can definitely get back to you in that kind of a way. Whenever I'm on something, that's how it's done. I am thankful for your attention today. I am thankful that you're trying to learn. I don't know if this turned out to be what you wanted it to be, but we're trying to share with you that Black history is more than just learning about individual people. It's trying to understand how these things occurred, like putting together a puzzle of 1,000 pieces. You have to see, where does this fit in and how did it get like that? Why are Black people so sensitive about this? Why do Black women get mad if you just ask them a question about that? Or why do Black men get upset because of this and that and the other? There is a history behind that. There is a history behind how we got here. Just like everybody that lives in Howell wants everybody to forget that the president of the Ku Klux Klan lived down there. You know, we want to forget that, but we can't. If we let that history go away, we will not understand why you're not going to find Black people driving through Howell at night. We're not going to drive through Howell at night because these things are still, do you understand that for Black people, these things are still occurring? All the people in Howell say they don't, but they do. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. When I drive down to Howell in the daytime, I don't feel like I'm not safe, but I'm not going at night. Christina, I'm sorry, I see your hand. Do you have a question? Unmute.
Okay. My question is a fairly simple one given the topic, but I was wondering if we contacted you or Barry, if you could provide us with even more resources for the historical information, because I would like to see more of this discussed even at the lower grades. My kids ranged from even kindergarten through Scranton Middle School right now. And I have a friend that lives in Minneapolis, and I went to high school with him, was friends with him all through high school. And every day so far this month, he's been sharing little tidbits. And I'm just blown away by all of the things that Americans should know in general that are not shared. So would you have a starting point, like if we contacted you, like books or, you know, textbooks that are more inclusive, that kind of thing?
Yes, and we can provide you from elementary school on up, whoever you want, whatever authors, you know, whatever kind of information you'd like to have, we can get you those authors and those names of those books. You know, I was speaking to a friend of mine who lives in Tanzania, and she was talking about a book that was written, and I had read it. And she said, and the name of it was written by a brother, and the name of the book is "We Will Shoot Back." Now, see, nobody's heard that one, right? And that's what Christina's talking about, to give you a list, even maybe with a sentence to say kind of what you're going to read in this book. And then you can read the backs and the covers and look it up. Yes, we will provide that and get that. And we will also give it to the Livingston Diversity Council, and they can put it on the website as well. And we'll put it on our church, and we will get it out. So we want that everywhere. We can give it to the librarians. They even come to they want that stuff. They come to the advisory council that I'm on. And I know that Ann Robinson, people like that, they want that information. And I see you there. And so all I'm saying is that people want this information. And Christina, that is an excellent opportunity. And then I can tell you, even when I put those on there, this is what we think about this information. You don't have to agree with that, but we can give you our opinions on it. So that's something we will definitely do. I provided that for the Rotary Club in Ann Arbor. That's something that we started a new organization within the Rotary called ARC. It stands for Anti-Racism Committee. And I was a founding member along with, you know, others in the club on that committee. And what they're trying to do is bring people along. And sometimes it's slow. It's slow. I mean, you can't tell me how to change my macaroni and cheese, okay? And that's how racism is. you got to understand that if somebody likes something a certain way, if that's how it's been a long time, it might be better, but it takes a while. And so even eating and why Black people eat this and not that, or why they like that sort of thing, that all came from slavery a long time ago. So Christina's right, and I will get that to you. I will try and get it to you before, what is this day, the 17th? We'll try to start that list and we'll add to it. We'll figure out how to do that, because there'll be some YouTube videos I think you all should see as well, with information from other people that might be helpful to you, to just turn you on to other people that you should be listening to if you want to be more informed. Okay, so we'll send it to you in 2 parts. And if you want to take my email off of there, Rev Whiten, I put the easy one up, Rev Whiten at Yahoo. That's the one I have for a long time, Rev Whiten at yahoo.com. You can get to me and tell me, make sure you send it to me. Don't just give it to Nicole, send it to me. So, that way you can get it. Thanks, Christina. Anybody else? Next, anybody else have a question?
Yes.
Go
Reverend,
ahead,
yeah.
Claire.
So first of all, I guess I want to thank Barry, because Barry, your personal story, that's collateral damage inside of you that has got to be difficult to share. Every time you say it, it's wrong and it's sad and it resurrects history up in you. So I know that took a lot for you to have to share that today, and thank you for that awareness. I wanted to make everybody aware that there is a House Resolution 40 that Congress is going to reintroduce again. It's House Resolution 40 based on the 40 acres and a mule, which was promised to Black people. I don't know, I haven't read it yet. I'm not familiar with what's in it, but if people are at all interested in reparation, yeah, I think it's going to come back up again, and maybe we can get some discussion as a United States. Maybe we can unite on reparation and healing. So I just wanted to throw that out there, but thank you, Barry.
Livingston County is an educated county, so I probably don't even need to say this. Barry, thank you. That's great that you got that, because I told you to unmute, you didn't see that. But anyway, but let me just say this. Livingston County is a wise county. And so you read and you want to know and you want to inform, but everybody's not like you. And so you have a duty to do what Christina's doing. She's talking to people in other places, especially if they have kids. Call on your Black friends. Somebody said to me, well, Black people get tired of educating white people. So what? So what? You still ask them. You tell them, you're the only Black person I know. You're the only Black family I know. And I need to come somewhere where I can get the truth. I can get an opinion that I trust. And so, yes, I'm trying to educate myself, but I'm reading everybody's opinion and I want to know what you think. That's what you have to do. Don't be afraid to say so. It's one of the things I admire about Nicole. Now, listen, I got to say this real quick because she might tell me she's going to kick us off of here. That's why I like to do my own Zoom so I can make it go over. But anyway, let me just say this. We have a surprise for Nicole today. We started race conversations, and people in the city and the county all came, and we're continuing to do that. We're having one next month. But when we did that, a group of people in the city of Brighton said, we want you to continue this. And so here's $1,000 and we want to help you do that. So it's that really helped us because we're a teeny tiny church and it does cost money to do these things. And so today, because I am the CEO of the Ann Arbor Community Center, I am able to give a grant to Nicole Creech and the Livingston Diversity Council because of her work and her dedication to making this come to Livingston County, and for her always wanting me to be a part of it and wanting truly to get to the bottom. I mean, it has not been easy for Nicole to become my good friend. because I just make it so hard, so difficult. Nicole, what about this? What about this? What about this? Y'all know Barry will tell you it's hard. It's hard sometimes when you're listening to Reverend Whiten, but she always listens. And I know that this Diversity Council is going to do even more. And we talked about it, and we want the council to have this little grant because Nicole has really worked hard, and so that she can put on another one of these and another time, another critical conversation, maybe help with this series, we don't know. But Nicole, we have a $500 grant to give you, and thank you and the council for all your work. And she didn't know that. She didn't ask me to come because she was getting at y'all. She didn't know. So y'all just be glad that you have this kind of person in the city. Barry, because she's gonna kick us out. Wait, Judy, and then Barry. Judy, go. Because I don't know if Nicole's kicking us out. We ain't letting her back in. Go ahead, Judy.
No, I just was putting up my hand to say, thumbs up.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay, Barry.
I'd like to thank everyone. Looks like what I said today was well received. I appreciate everyone's comments. I put a couple of items in the chat for further reading. I highly recommend everything written by James Baldwin, but if you want to start for a critical conversation on race, I highly recommend the Fire Next Time. And I'm sure Reverend Whiten will provide a list. Also, for my own personal history, there's a book I just read called The Broken Heart of America, St. Louis and the Violent History of America by Walter Johnson. It's a very good book. And then we were talking about reparations, and thank you for bringing that up. Ta-Nehisi Coates writes for The Atlantic, and he wrote an extensive article called The Case for Reparations. And it convinced me, because I was somebody that didn't necessarily believe in it. And it turned the tide for me. I highly recommend you read that. And thank you again, everyone.
Listen, you guys, I know reparations sounds like a big deal and that it's too much money and how you ever going to get people back. But here's the thing. If you leave out of a store tomorrow and they cheat you out of $1 of your change, $1, I bet you will go back to the store or call them and say, look, it's not a big deal. I'm not coming back. I just don't want that to happen to the next person. At some point, if your husband does something wrong, if your wife does something wrong, you want them to admit they did it.
Amen.
You want them to say, I'm sorry, I actually did it. They don't get to say, well, I don't know why you're upset, but if I did something. No, you need to know what you did. You need to know what you did. And that's what reparations is about. It's about America finally telling the truth. America took everything they got from everybody. The land they took from the Native Americans. I mean, seriously, folks, we're all Americans. If your little niece and nephew and grandchildren were stealing things, you'd smack their little hands and tell them, you got to take that back. You got to tell somebody you did that. And as Americans, we've never done that. We've never admitted or owned our space of error. And that's where the problem is, because I always got this bad taste in my mouth because you've never really, truly apologized. I mean, and so that's what it's about. And that's why Claire wants you to read that bill and understand what that bill is about, what's going on. And that's why Nicole goes through all this. That's why she lets me go over, because these things are important. I know she didn't say that, but I'm just throwing that in so I don't get in trouble. Okay, but the point is that these things are important. So I'm going to give it back to Nicole. But you guys, thank you for coming. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for caring. It gives us hope as Black people that this many people came on today and stayed on. It's 47 people on here right now. And if Nicole will let me, I will tell you, the last time we had one, only 16 people came. So now I expect all of y'all to come next time here to the very next one, because it's important. Nicole.
Reverend, thank you so very much. I thank you for keeping talking after you announced the grant because I had to gather myself again. I got a little teary. So thank you so much. We will make good on the grant. We've got lots of things kind of in the works that require some funding. So it will be super helpful. So thank you so much. And thank you for your honesty, your bravery, your invitation into your experience. Barry, same for you. Uh, every time I hear you speak, I'm just I just keep thinking, wow, he's a smart man. Uh, and I love hearing it. I love hearing it. I love processing it. And I'm so glad that we recorded it because I'm going to need to listen to it a couple of times to get everything. So that being said, again, thank you both. Thank you all our participants for being here today with us. We could not do this without the Livingston County passion to make change. And so we very much appreciate all of you being here with us as well. Next month, we're actually going to change the date a little bit. It'll be on a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday. And it's a little bit longer. We're co-hosting with the Human Services Collaborative Body in Livingston County to bring in Dr. Jill Griffin from the Michigan Department of Education to talk about cultural competency in a changing world. And I struggle with the word competency just because I don't think any of us could ever be competent in all of this. And I think that's actually part of the lesson that we're going to be learning. So so don't get hung up on the word, because I definitely get hung up on that word. And then give me a day or two, and the recording of today's session can be found on the Livingston County Diversity Council's YouTube channel. You can search us up at Livingston Diversity and find all of the recording from today, as well as our January recording. Feel free to reach out to the Diversity Council, again, back to any of our communications, either our website, our email, by Facebook, Instagram, however you want to reach out. Let us know what you need and we will get to you. So again, thank you all so much for everything. Reverend Barry,
yeah,
thank you for sharing with us today.
Nicole's telling you to reach out to her. The council gets better with you. As you participate with the council, it gets better for that reason. And so tell your friends and participate with the council. If you don't like what they're doing, go to the meetings. Say so. That's how you do it. So that's how you make change. And run for office. Run for office too.
Awesome. Thank you so much all. Have a blessed day. Thank you again, Reverend and Barry and all of our participants. Take care.